Well, it feels like the Australian Open has been going on forever and ever and ever, but we're just about halfway through, I think. It's quarterfinals time anyway, and I'm here live to preview and predict all 8 matches in the Australian Open quarterfinals, so the 4 women's matches and the 4 men's matches as well. Hey everyone, welcome back to the tennis vlog, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. That way you can stay up to date with when I'm posting, because I seem to change my mind quite a lot, but here we are. It was not possible for me to be able to pre-record this video because the time zones between me and Australia and watching tennis and then talking about the tennis and doing other stuff, it's messed up. It's not possible for me to do an in-depth preview and predictions and then edit it and get it up in time. So seeing as most of you wanted a preview and predictions video anyway, I thought we'd better do it live. And I am shattered and exhausted, and I need to make sure this is streaming, which I think it is. If you are not able to watch live, that's fine. This will still be up when I'm done, and hopefully it will have a bit of a shelf life so you can watch it over the next day or two. The quarterfinals begin at, I think, 1 a.m. British time, so they're coming up upon us quickly, and I can see that a few of you have left comments already. If there is time at the end, I'm on a bit of a tight schedule today, so if there is time at the end, I will answer your questions, but for the most part, I'm just going to go through and preview each match one by one, going in order of the first day and then the second day, and give my thoughts on them. There will be some that are longer than others. There are players, honestly, that are still in the tournament that despite my best efforts, I haven't been able to watch properly yet. I've seen them elsewhere. Every single player in the draw I've watched before, but I haven't necessarily seen them all in Melbourne. So that's annoying for me and a shame for you, but hopefully using my previous knowledge of them, I'll be able to give some sort of insight on how the match might play out. So I'll be looking down a bit more than usual. Usually for a preview and predictions video, I've had a lot more time to prepare. I've had a bit of a think about what I'm going to say. Honestly, today I don't know most of the predictions right now. I probably have thought about 1 or 2. The rest, I have no idea. I'll just base it on my findings as we go along. But I've got some lists of results up. We've got some stats to help us. So if you have any comments you'd like to share, please feel free to leave them in the chat. But I'm sorry if I don't get to commenting on all of them. Right, hey to everyone, thank you for joining. And for those of you who are staying up to crazy times watching this, I respect your dedication, and I feel like I've got cotton wool in my brain, so if anything goes really wrong, I mean, I sound like such a wimp, always blaming tiredness, but seriously, I found it so hard to find time to sleep. I meant to stay up for the whole tennis tonight, and I ended up just falling asleep at intervals in front of the TV. I didn't see everything I wanted to see, so thank goodness for stats. Right, let's begin then with, I don't know if I mentioned, but some of these will be longer than others because some players I've watched more in depth. I'm not going to try and drag it out if I haven't really seen much of some of the players, so yeah, some previews will be longer than others. I apologize in advance. Maybe you want short and snappy and to the point. I ramble. I mean, how long have we been going? Nearly 4 minutes. Nearly 4 minutes, and I haven't started the preview. So typical, Abigail. Right, let's start then with Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova versus Danielle Collins in the women's quarterfinals, and this is probably the most unexpected matchup. Neither of these two were forecasted to get this far, and as far as I'm aware, neither of these two were seeded. Pavlyuchenkova has been seeded at a slam before. She's been on the scene for a while. She's played top players deep into main draws, but she's always been one of those players that is capable but not consistent. She doesn't stand out in terms of her playing style. She can hit a heavy ball. She's got a little bit of variety to her game, but I don't think she's ever really fulfilled her true potential. She was world #1 in juniors, and after that, she kind of wandered away a bit. She couldn't really take the pressure that came with having that junior world #1 status, and it's a shame because it's really hard to break through from juniors to seniors. The games are played completely differently. It's very much kind of hit and hope sometimes in the juniors, and then you come to the seniors and there's a different level of mental strength and physical strength required, and it's really hard to make the transition. So that really knocked Pavlyuchenkova for a number of years, but over the past few years, Particularly a couple of years ago, she was getting more consistent results. I feel like this is her best Grand Slam run in a while, and I'm just going to check back. At the US Open, yeah, she was out in round one to Rebecca Peterson. Going back to Wimbledon, she was also out in round one to Sue Shea. And then going back to the French Open, out in round two to Samantha Stosur, who's not in her best form of late, so not a great result particularly. So yeah, she's been struggling at the Grand Slams, the big occasions. But this week, I mean, we scanned down her list of victims, and actually, in my opinion, every round has not necessarily been a high-profile player, but it's fairly impressive. Monica Puig led, actually, I'm thinking now, when I look at scores, it jolts my memory and brings back stuff. And I actually watched at least the first set of her first round match, because Puig was 4-love up in that first set and actually hitting really strongly, looking very comfortable. And then Pavlyuchenkova stormed back, won the next 6 games to actually win that set 6-4 and finish in straight sets with a 6-4, 6-3 win. Now, Puig was moving forward. She wasn't just hitting from the baseline, but Pavlyuchenkova just kind of took a deep breath and was able to control her shots more and able to come out with that set and kind of rolled through the second one, really. Puig kind of was not as resistant in that one. So, yeah, from what I remember seeing of Pavlyuchenkova in that first match, she looked quite decent. It was hard to say whether she could sustain her form or whether Puig had just dropped off, because it was not Puig's strongest match by any means, and it's a bit of a story of her career at the current moment. She's not coping well. And then in the second round, an upset of number 9 seed Kiki Bertens, 3-6, 6-3, 6-3 over Bertens. Bertens a tough opponent. She's very gritty and consistent from the baseline and can mix it up as well. She's been deep into Grand Slams. Very good win there for Pavlyuchenkova. Not outstanding, but she then backed it up with a thrashing of Alexandra Sasnovich, 6-love, 6-3. Sasnovich, who played incredibly well in Australia last year. And then, most recently, an upset of number 5 seed Sloane Stephens. Lost that first set tiebreak, which must have been... I mean, I always think it's harder to come back from losing a first set tiebreak than it is to come back from being whitewashed in an opening set. If you've been beaten 6-1, by the end of the set you're kind of almost resetting already for the next set and just moving on, whereas with a tiebreak you've come so close, and then to be a few points away from it and for it to get away from you, that's really difficult to bounce back from. But Pavlyuchenkova did that really well, 6-3, 6-3 against Stephens. And we might as well look at the stats for that one now. Let's have a look at some of the stats from Pavlyuchenkova's win over Stephens. 72% of first serves, that's decent, and that's key for her to be able to set up with that shot and defend her serve, giving herself the opportunity to break. She came to the net 40 times, and that's the best way Pavlyuchenkova can mix things up. She's always been fairly comfortable at the net, and she was really forcing herself to go forwards. 27 out of 40, that's not bad at the net at all. Stephens, meanwhile, had a 50% conversion rate, 9-18. And if you look down at those winners, you can see that she hit even 18 more winners than Stephens. So the fact that she's approaching the net and that she's hitting a lot of winners means that she's definitely playing an attacking style. And I think that's key against Stephens. Stephens is very good defensively, but she can also, when she's on the front foot, really dictate with great control, and she can end the rallies very quickly as well. Pavlyuchenkova doing well there to take that out of her hands. Yes, she definitely hit a fierce number of unforced errors, 53 unforced errors from Pavlyuchenkova, but Stephens not incredibly clean herself, so definitely seized her opportunities there. Well, spoke about that a bit longer than I intended, but I can't stop myself once I start unless someone tells me to be quiet. Let's go for Danielle Collins then. Collins, my earliest memory of her was at the US Open in 2011 or 2012. She lost in the first round to Laura Robson. I believe she played college tennis. And I didn't really see much of her on the WTA tour from there, but she had a great run last year. She reached the fourth round or quarterfinals of Indian Wells, fourth round of Miami. So back-to-back deep runs on big tournaments on hard courts, which was kind of a forecast for her run here. But at the beginning, of the tournament, with so many players actually doing really well coming into the events, you wouldn't have been likely to highlight Collins' name as someone to go deep, especially given that she was in Angelique Kerber's quarter. And for Kerber, well, for many people even, Kerber was a very strong pick to actually win the title. I instinctively thought, when I was thinking about it, my first thought was to presume that Kerber had a very strong shot at it, and I would even have gone out there and predicted her to win it if I wasn't going with Serena Williams, because it's always the safe thing to do when Serena's in the draw. So, big first win for Collins over Julia Gerges. Now, Gerges isn't always a name to jump out at you, but she had a very strong season last year, very fluid with her shots, very good at placing well. She's got good mental strength during matches. She hasn't had the best start to this year, I don't think, but she'll be disappointed with that loss. But for Collins, great, especially to come back from losing that first set 6-2, then take a narrow tiebreak in the second set before finishing at 6-4. And that really seems to have set her up for the rest of the tournament, because she hasn't dropped a set since. She's faced Sasha Vickery, a fellow American, 19th seed Caroline Garcia, and 2nd seed Angelique Kerber, who was many people's pick to win. 6-3, 6-5, 6-5. Can you win a set 6-5 in tennis? Not unless your opponent retires. 6-3, 7-5 over Vickery. 6-3, 6-2 over Garcia, which impressive scoreline. I saw a bit of that match actually, striking very heavy and deep, really taking on the ball and not letting Garcia dictate the points. And then 6-love, 6-2 over Kerber, which, I mean, I didn't see it, unfortunately. I meant to catch up on some highlights. I can't actually remember if I did. But technically, I mean, Collins plays with power. Her big thing is the way she's so precise with the heavy ball that she hits. And Kerber, in her previous match before she played Collins, played an Australian player called Kimberly Birrell, who I think actually strikes the ball in a very similar way to Collins. Quite heavy, topspin, trying to go deep, trying to have small margins. And Kerber whitewashed her. It was, I believe, 6-1, 6-love, if not the other way around, 6-love, 6-1. So for Collins to then come out and absolutely thrash Kerber is really impressive. Let's have a look at some of those stats, shall we, from that match. 2 aces Collins to 0 for Kerber, 5 double faults from Kerber. So obviously Kerber not having her most clinical day, which is key. 17 unforced errors for both of them, but the key difference, 6 winners for Kerber and 29 winners for Collins. So you can see who's trying to be the aggressor there, who's getting pushed around and maybe getting a bit flustered. But yeah, even if Kerber was having an off day, which she seemed to be, that's massive, because Kerber was so impressive ahead of this match. So impressive. The angle she was striking on the back foot, even when it looked like she was having trouble, she was finding a way to come through. She was very calm and collected. Yeah, and on front foot or back foot, whether she was absorbing pace or whether she was being run around, Kerber just looked very comfortable in Melbourne. So for Collins to pull off that win was impressive. And then I saw some of what she was saying afterwards about how confident she was feeling. This might have been in either her encore interview or her press conference, but she said that she feels like the Grand Slam wins are going to keep coming. That's a very confident thing to say, especially in the wake of a big victory. It's notoriously difficult to back up these big wins. Probably slightly more easy on the women's side, because when you knock off a massive name on the men's side, as we'll come to later, that really seems to take it out of them, especially over best of 5 sets. But Collins seems to be riding a wave here even. And I don't believe that Collins and Pavlyuchenkova have played before, probably because neither of them are really usually getting deep into draws at the moment. So this will be their first meeting. And thinking about the matchup of styles, Pavlyuchenkova, I think, definitely needs to keep coming up to that net, trying to cut Collins off, not let her dictate, because that's what she loves, landing it deep, doing that kind of thing. And Collins just needs to be key. The key is the return, I think. She needs to jump on that return and get on the front foot immediately. I think she'll be okay with her serve. If she can set herself up, Pavlyuchenkova is going to have a hard time coming to the net on the return. So Collins has a great forehand. She can dictate with that. Hopefully, for her sake, finish the points quickly, not get into too much of a rally where Pavlyuchenkova has more of an option and an opportunity to come forwards. But looking at the whole picture, I think that Collins will, well, if she's feeling confident and playing as well as she has been, she should defend her serve well, and I think that she will probably have more opportunities on the return. Yes, this is her first time so deep in a slam, and Pavlyuchenkova has had more experience, but there is always a surprise semi-finalist or a new semi-finalist, I guess, usually of the younger age range, in the semi-finals at the Australian Open. This year I thought that player might be Aryna Sabalenka, but she went out in the third round. This year I think it might be Danielle Collins, and I'm going to predict Collins to win this match, and I think I'll be a bit daring and predict Collins in straight sets. So that is Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova versus Danielle Collins, and there are so many tabs open on my computer, so I'm going to get rid of them now. I've done them. I'm so scared of crossing something before I've had the chance to look at it. So, 1 match down, 7 matches to go. The next one we're going to look at is the second women's match that will be played either today if you're in Australia, or tomorrow if you're in the UK, or America, or anywhere else in the globe. Feel free to let me know in the chat where you're watching from. That would be cool. So we've got Petra Kvitova, who is seeded 8th, against Ashley Barty, who is seeded 15th. I'm looking forward to this one. I think this will be a great matchup of styles. 2 players that are in good form. Barty played herself into some good rhythm at the Hopman Cup. Great thing about the exhibition event, the Hopman Cup, is that you are guaranteed match play, whether you're winning or losing. And I think that was a good thing for Barty, because she's really come into this tournament looking comfortable. And yeah, she was able to get a lot of matches in both singles and doubles under her belt, and that allowed her to exercise the full range and the full capacity of her tennis. And as I've said many times before, she has a lot of things going for her, a lot of different tools that not every player has in their box on the WTA, and the ability to come forward and do so with control. Kvitova as well, one of the most lethal players on tour. Also, one of the ones that tended to blow hot and cold. Kvitova's always been streaky, and I think she always will be streaky. It's just how Kvitova is. It's not necessarily a bad thing if your main aim is to win Grand Slams, because all you need is a streak of 7 matches where you're playing great, and hey presto, you have a Grand Slam trophy. And I made it sound a lot easier than it actually is in real life, but Kvitova's done it twice at Wimbledon. And great stuff from Kvitova, because she's not had a good run in Australia for a number of years. She has been to the semis before. She made a quarter-final run once before that, or it was the year after. But for many years, she couldn't get past the 3rd round. She was falling in the 1st round, 2nd round, making a lot of unforced errors. It was quite ugly stuff, really, knowing the beautiful tennis that Kvitova is capable of. But I mean, this woman's incredible. She obviously had that knife attack a couple of years ago now, when a burglar invaded her home, had her playing hand was actually severed by the knife, and she had to have a big operation on that. A lot of people asking questions about whether she would come back, but you can never write off the competitive spirit, the champion spirit. And Kvitova, I believe, won Birmingham actually just a few months after she'd come back, which was amazing, really. And she's been playing some of her best tennis in a long time since that attack. Maybe it's renewed her energy and her motivation, and she's playing, looking almost more relaxed. And clearly, I mean, she went through such a horrific event there, and I guess it gives you something like that, gives you a refreshed perspective on life, and you kind of realize what you have. I mean, you can always be grateful, but until something like that happens, you're never truly fully aware of what you have until I guess it's almost gone. So let's have a look at Kvitova's run first of all. Good first straight sets win, 6-3, 6-2 over Magdalena Rybarikova, who was a Wimbledon semi-finalist not too long ago. She's quite an unorthodox player. She'll slice off both the forehand and backhand. She doesn't hit many clean shots, really. She likes to mix it up. But Kvitova was clearly in the zone there, because when she's locked in, she actually doesn't get troubled by this kind of thing. If Kvitova's having an off day, that sort of game style would send her crazy, but very good control there for a 6-3, 6-2 win. And honestly, let's have a look at how many games she's dropped going into the quarterfinals. This is games, not sets, and she's dropped 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17 games in 4 matches. That's pretty impressive. And you look at the players she's beaten as well. None of them seeded, but all of them capable. Irina Camelia Begu, she's been seeded at a slam before. Better on clay, but still a dominant 6-1, 6-3 win for Kvitova. Over Belinda Bencic, I was very impressed with that win over Bencic because Bencic has been top 10. She likes playing against these top players. She has a game that troubles them, makes them think, and she was looking in good form coming into this tournament. I had her down as a dark horse. I thought that maybe Kvitova wouldn't be able to sustain her pre-Melbourne form because I'm pretty sure she'd won a title, Petra, coming into this event. Let me just check my facts because I don't want to be giving fake news as I have done previously. Yeah, Sydney. And in the final of Sydney last week, as I was going to come to, but I forgot, was it last week? 2 weeks ago now, she beat Ashley Barty, her upcoming opponent, and that was a very close 3-setter. So I'm surprised that Kvitova hasn't got fatigued or worn out and that she's kept up her form, but good for her. Very impressive stuff. On to Ashley Barty. Similarly, she's not had too much trouble coming into this stage. Luksika Kumkum, who beats Kvitova a few years ago here in the first round. I think she's beaten Kvitova twice here, actually, over the past few years. But yeah, 6-2, 6-2, great controlling scoreline. Yafan Wang also went down 6-2, 6-3 to Barty in the second round. Maria Sakkari, impressive win over Sakkari, the Greek player who has great firepower. She doesn't have as much variety as players such as Barty, but she's very comfortable from the baseline these days. Also played Hopman Cup, got some match play under her belt. But after a close first set, Barty saw her off 7-5, 6-1. And then the clash with Maria Sharapova. Sharapova had just taken out Caroline Wozniacki, the defending champion. People were starting to say that Sharapova was looking back to herself of old. She was hitting a lot of winners, being very dominant. And she was up against another player who's not necessarily a power player. Barty can hit clean and go from the baseline, but she likes to mix it up a lot. But Barty, after losing that first set, regrouped really well for a 4-6, 6-1, 6-4 defeat of Sharapova, which I think was her first win over Sharapova. She's definitely played her before and lost. She's seeded higher, but Sharapova has a ton more experience, was looking more comfortable. And as I've said before, I'm always quite skeptic over Sharapova at the moment when she starts to look kind of comfortable at a slam. She does seem to come up to a match where everything changes and she's lost that feeling of comfort and ease. But great stuff from Barty because on a big stage like that, where obviously the majority of people there, Australian, wanting her to win, a great match to come through and showing that, these powerful top players who've won slams don't intimidate her. And I wish I'd seen more of Barty this week. As I said in the last video, she's a player that I followed very closely over the years. I've seen her ability to slice, her ability to come forwards to the net, the great control she has. It's a very beautiful game to watch. But at the same time, there always seemed to be something missing when it came to going deep at the big events and when it came to beating the top players on a regular basis. I thought it was just her mental strength at key moments and her lack of consistency when she let big moments and big opportunities go. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but I wish I'd seen more of her in Melbourne because she seems to be righting that ship a bit here. Now, Kvitova will be a bigger test because I believe she's in better form than Sharapova. She offers a different test to anything that the other players have offered her thus far. She's lefty, so if she can get that swing on the forehand, land that lefty serve, but the fact that they've played each other so recently gives both of them a bit of a helping hand. Now, what time are we? 5:05. I'm okay for now. Let's have a look at recent stats. Very powerful from Kvitova to absolutely ease past Amanda Anisimova. Did we go through her path? Yeah, we did, but I stopped at Bencic. But Amanda Anisimova, who was Kvitova's most recent victim, 6-2, 6-1, was in great form. Saw off Arina Sabalenka, who would have been quite a tough test, I think, for Kvitova. Great firepower, great flat serve, great movements, but Kvitova just absolutely packed her off. Yeah, with some great aggression, 18 winners there over a very short match, 86% of first serves in. I think that's a key stat because that just allows Kvitova to dictate from the offset. She's not really giving Anisimova many openings, whereas Anisimova's first serve percentage down at 53, not fantastic. Barty against Sharapova. 28 winners to Sharapova's 17. I would reckon that a lot of them were from the net. She did come to the net 16 times, won 12 of those points. 6 aces. Looks like she's landing a serve well. I would assume using good variety because she has the ability to do that. And won 17 more total points. So great stuff there from Barty. Head-to-head, Kvitova and Barty. Kvitova leads 3-love, but their most recent meeting was their closest. Barty actually sailed through the first set 6-1 before Kvitova came back to edge the last two, and it ended in a final set tiebreak with Kvitova winning that tiebreak 7-3. It would be rather awful if their Grand Slam clash came down to a tiebreak. Now for the prediction. They've played at Birmingham as well. That was the tournament that Kvitova won a few months after coming back from the knife attack. Their other meeting was 2012 Roland Garros. Easy win for Kvitova, but a long time ago. So that one, not taking that one into as much consideration. The last two have just been exceedingly close, which it indicates that this match could go either way. So got to think about the occasion. Barty's never really gone deep in a single slam before. She's played double slams. Will Kvitova falter mentally? I think at this point I've just got to give her the benefit of the doubt. I mean, the crowd and the occasion might carry Barty through. And honestly, this one is one that could go either way. But I will... It's going to kill Barty, really, isn't it, if she loses another close one to her on the trot. But it's tough. It's tough because a lot of people have been talking about Barty and how well she's been playing. One of my sisters predicted her to win the whole thing. But then Kvitova has been very impressive too, and I've seen more of Kvitova than Barty. So I'll give Kvitova the benefit of the doubt, and I will say Petra Kvitova to win this one in 3 sets. But don't be surprised if that's incorrect. Right, so 2 matches down, 6 matches to go. I might have to be a bit quicker because, as I say, I should technically be finishing this at 5:30. I think I can afford to go on a bit longer. I just rambled. This is why I edit videos, you know, otherwise you would have like a 3-hour video. Now you know why it takes me so long. Okay, get rid of that one. On to the men's matches upcoming, and we have what would have been a clash of last year's finalists, because this is where Marin Cilic and Roger Federer, Federer the winner last year, Cilic the runner-up, were scheduled to meet. And honestly, I thought at least one of them would get there, but no, it is Roberto Bautista Agut versus Stefanos Tsitsipas. Bautista Agut, the 22nd seed, Tsitsipas, the number 14 seed, and each of them took out a finalist of last year in the 4th round. So let's have a look at their paths to date. Bautista Agut, the player I have seen the most matches of this season, which sounds crazy, but it's true. I've watched about 6 or 7 of his matches. He's in great form. He clearly loves playing at this time of year, so consistent from the baseline and able to change up the pace as well, rip the firepower to get the winner when he needs it, dig into those corners, bring himself up to the net. Started with that marathon win over Murray, which seems a lifetime ago now, the loss that could have been the final match of Andy Murray's career, but I mean, that drama got blown out of proportion, so we will see whether that's the case or not. He led in his first 2 rounds against Andy Murray and John Millman, who also competes with his heart on his sleeve, leaves everything out on the court, was playing with great intensity. In both those matches, he led by 2 sets to love and won in 5 sets. So absolute credit to him, because I don't think his level seriously dropped. The 2 sets he lost to Murray were tie breaks. One of the sets he lost to John Millman was a tie break, and he had match points in it. I think he even had 4 match points in a row, potentially. It's hard to remember all of these stats. But came through both of them in 5 sets, and then got a straight sets win, finally, over number 10 seed Karen Khachanov, the man with the big serve and the all-course ability, who took down Novak Djokovic at the end of last year. Good win for Bautista Agut, 6-4, 7-5, 6-4. Set him up for a meeting with Marin Cilic, and he'll be pleased that he'd won that match in straight sets because Cilic absolutely gave him the runaround. He was 2-1 up. He lost the first set on a tiebreak. Didn't let that phase him, and this is really showing Roberto Bautista Agut's mental strength now, because it was a very close tiebreak, 8-6 in the tiebreak, and yet he rebounded to win the next two sets fairly easily, 6-3, 6-2. Then it was a 6-4 set in the fourth, and he regrouped to finish with 6-4 in the fifth for a 5-set win. So I'm very impressed with Bautista Agut at the moment, his all-court ability. We can have a look at some of those stats, but I'm pretty confident of how it went down. 17 aces for Cilic he managed to survive, which is great, and he hammered down 10 of his own, which is pretty decent. You wouldn't think of Bautista Agut as a man of having a brilliant serve. 67% of first serves is decent. He had 13 breakpoint opportunities, only converted 5, which was enough against Cilic, but if Tsitsipas is still feeling confidence after knocking out Federer, he's probably going to have to improve his consistency in the big moments there. He managed impressively. It's all about the way he's able to last in the rallies, because Cilic was clearly trying to be the aggressor here. He hits, let me find it again, 65 winners. Roberto Bautista Agut hit 44. So a big difference there. But unforced errors, a whopping 73 for Cilic and just 38 for Bautista Agut. So he plays a very solid game. And I think it just seems to make some of the players panic, really, because he just doesn't go away. And that is a great quality to have at the moment. But hopping across to Stefanos Tsitsipas anyway, because we are running short on time, dearie me. Shouldn't have rambled for so long, but we can't change anything now. Yeah, nothing particularly impressive about Tsitsipas early on, to be honest. I mean, we know he's a great next-gen player. I, for one, have been aware of him for a number of years. He's got a very decent serve. He plays like Federer, who he idolized growing up. He's got those slick one-handed backhand. He likes to come forward and play at the net. He can use the slice, but he also likes to move in, do the 1-2 punch a lot, really try and shorten the points sometimes. And 3 4-set wins to open his campaign over Berrettini, Victor Troicki, and Nicolas Basilashvili, the 19th seed. So none of them were upsets. Technically, he performed to where his ranking should go. Then he came up against Roger Federer, and I know some people had doubts about Federer this tournament. I did, just because he's won 2 Australian Opens back-to-back. He hasn't had the best past few months by his standards. And he had looked very good coming into this match, Federer. He hadn't dropped a set. And if he was to get pushed, I thought that might be a problem, as I'm sure many people did, because if you look back at his recent slam performances, he's been playing fairly convincingly by scoreline, and then he'll get pushed and he won't necessarily cope with that in the best way at all. So it was a 6-7, 7-6, 7-5, 7-6 win for Tsitsipas, so very little in it. And obviously it made big headlines because the biggest win of Tsitsipas' career and a big upset of Federer. I missed most of the matches on Sundays. I don't tend to watch tennis on a Sunday unless it's a Grand Slam final. Usually I'm in church. But I was scoreboard watching this one for probably the first set and a half, set and a bit. And Federer obviously squeezed out that first set. And what I will say is, you can't tell everything from not watching a match, but when you've watched tennis for as long as I have, and probably some of you have, and you've watched these same players like Federer over and over again, you can feel the match, as well as if you were watching it and seeing it. Sometimes you can almost, if you can't actually see what's going on, you can actually tell better where the match is headed. I can't really explain it, but it's happened for me a number of times with these players, Nadal, Djokovic, Murray, players that have been around for ages that I've watched a lot. I can kind of feel where a match is going. And I felt that with Federer. He was a setup, and it was midway through the second set. He was having chances to break, and he wasn't taking them. And I thought that he wouldn't win another set. I thought he was on his way out. And it's just because when Federer is pushed these days at slams, he seems to almost overthink it. And I know that the scoreline shows this one was very close, but I do think that when Federer is struggling nowadays, it's more of a mental issue than a physical one. We know he can play well, but when he's making unforced errors, when he's not there in the big moments, it's because just something isn't right in the head game, really. I think that's the problem. And for Tsitsipas as well, from his side of the court, I've seen so many matches where a younger player, e.g. Nick Kyrgios when he beat Nadal at Wimbledon, is on a roll, riding a wave of adrenaline, and they're almost in a zone and they're not really thinking too much, and they're almost playing instinctively. They're so wrapped up in what's going on. And it just had that feel of Federer being a bit wobbly and Tsitsipas just being ready and being zoned in for this win. It was two very similar game styles playing against each other. I have watched part of this match now, and Tsitsipas was just the player there in the big moments, which is interesting because he's comparatively young, inexperienced. Many players are drawing comparisons between Tsitsipas' win over Federer and Federer's breakout win over Pete Sampras at Wimbledon all those years ago. And yeah, there definitely are comparisons there. Both of them were ranked world number 15. Both of them only had one title to their name at the time. Both of them played a very similar brand of tennis with the one-handed backhand coming forward, etc., etc. I wouldn't be ready to call this a breakout win for Tsitsipas though, because he needs to back it up. I mean, any young, talented player like Tsitsipas can ride a wave of adrenaline against a player whose forehand wasn't working incredibly well for the whole match, who was having little dips, and take advantage. His big challenge now is to show that against a lower ranked player, but a very informed player in Bautista Agut, he can back up a win that probably, without him realizing, took up a lot of physical and mental energy. So let's have a quick look at those stats from Tsitsipas anyway. Oh my word, we are running out of time. Let's do it quickly. 20 aces for Tsitsipas. Landing that serve, absolutely key. And to be able to get cheap points off that serve in key moments as well takes a lot of pressure, I guess, off a player's shoulders. 78% of first serves won. 61 winners for Federer, 62 for Tsitsipas. So a lot of these stats are actually quite close, but in the unforced errors department, Federer just, a lot higher there, 36 for Tsitsipas, 55 for Federer. So, I mean, clearly Federer didn't have his best day, but for Tsitsipas to be able to play a two-time defending champion and arguably the greatest of all time on that court, Rod Laver Arena, a night session, wild energy, and to come through the way he did, I mean, we've seen it happen before with other young players against other big players, but it's still impressive. It never ceases to be impressive, and I will be interested to see whether he can back this up against a player who he's never competed against before, and a player who brings a different game style to the table than Federer. He's playing with more topspin, Bautista Agut, probably at the moment more consistent off the ground, when Federer is struggling mentally in the mental department of his game. He is shanking a lot more. He's missing a lot more of the shots that he would usually make in his sleep. So Tsitsipas is really going to have it tough, I think, against Bautista Agut's consistency. I'm going to assume that Bautista Agut does bring the same consistency to their clash because he hasn't really relented yet since the beginning of the season. He won a title coming into the event, and as far as I know, he is yet to lose a match this season. He is on a 9-match winning streak. So Tsitsipas' job is to snap that. Honestly, Tsitsipas played very impressively against Federer, but he is coming up against a different game style. I can't remember the order of play. He might be playing at a different time of day. Conditions are different. I just think that Bautista Agut has had a lot of experience facing the top players and being at a similar position to this as opposed to Tsitsipas, and he will probably embrace the fact that he's not having to play a real top player. I don't think he's going to be intimidated by Tsitsipas given the battles he's come through so far. Is he likely to be fatigued? Maybe, but I'm probably going to give Bautista Agut the benefit of the doubt here, probably because, honestly, I've seen a lot more of his matches than Tsitsipas recently. But I think it will extend straight sets, and for the sake of having to make a prediction, I'm going to say Bautista Agut in 4 sets. Bautista Agut to win this one in 4 sets. Now, where are we up to? It's 20 past 5. I'll do another one, and then if we're taking too long, what I could do is end here, having done the first 4 matches, and then do the next 4 tomorrow. But I would like to get them all done today because I have other work to do tomorrow as well. So let's just see how we go. Sorry if I'm talking at the speed of light as well. Because when I'm trying to reach a deadline, I think my talking speed picks up pace without me really realizing it. Okay, Rafael Nadal versus Frances Tiafoe, who has had a run that not many people expected. Tiafoe was one of the brightest American talents a couple of years ago. He's had some good results, but struggled to really break through consistently. You could see how much making the quarterfinals meant to him. He broke down in tears after defeating Grigor Dimitrov 7-5, 7-6, 6-7, 7-5. So a very close one, and again, we're seeing a young player being clutch in the big moments, which is so important. Dimitrov, no, he hasn't had his best results of recent times, but he was in a good place this tournament, and I think his disappointment after he lost shows how it upset him that he wasn't able to take advantage of this draw. Ahead of that, a straight sets first round win for Tiafoe, then the big one, knocking off Kevin Anderson, and I watched that match against Anderson. Great stuff from Tiafoe on the forehands, on coming forwards, not being intimidated by Anderson. Anderson didn't have his best day, but, I mean, he was still one of the most in-form players coming into the tournament, so 4-6, 6-4, 6-4, 7-5 for Tiafoe, very impressive. Then a 5 sets win over Andreas Seppi, which people might think average, but Seppi's had some great results here. He's beaten Federer here, he's beaten Nick Kyrgios here before, and he's a tricky player. He's got a lot going for him, so a good win for Tiafoe because he was also backing up that big win over Anderson. And that leaves him looking very comfortable coming in to face Nadal in his match with Dimitrov. He hit 63 winners to 54 unforced errors, so a positive differential, but I don't think Nadal would be as forgiving of those numbers. 10 aces. Dimitrov hit 21, so credit to him for being able to withstand that. And then heading quickly on to Nadal, hasn't dropped a set and has only played Australians so far, so he's been up against the crowd a little bit as well, has Nadal. Not that the crowd would ever fully turn on him because he is a crowd favourite. So James Duckworth in round 1, the Aussie who was trying to serve and volley rather a lot, Nadal pinpointed that when Duckworth kind of went for broke and put the pressure on at the end of that match. He was ready, slowed his own pace down and was very strategic. 6-4, 6-3, 7-5 there for Nadal. Then against Matthew Ebden, 6-3, 6-2, 6-2 win. Ebden was playing quite a similar brand, really, and Nadal able to deal with that. And then Alex de Minaur, who absolutely threw the kitchen sink at him. He was all over that court. He was pulling off some stunning winners with great firepower. I mean, when you look at de Minaur for a player that small, when players are usually that fast and smaller than most, I guess, you don't usually expect them to be able to come out with that kind of pace really on the shots. But de Minaur, great timing and doing a lot of things well, but Nadal was just that much better, using his serve to great effect, coming out on the right end of a lot of long rallies. 6-1, 6-2, 6-4, the exact same scoreline as their Wimbledon clash. And then, oh no, sorry, he beat Thomas Berdych as well. I forgot because it was so quick. But yes, Berdych, the first non-Australian opponent that Nadal beats. 6-love, 6-1. It's Berdych able to laugh at the situation, posted on Instagram that yes, he knew he didn't turn up for the first 2 sets. So Nadal steamrolled through them and then edged a tiebreak in the 3rd set. So the closest really that Nadal's come to losing a set. But you have to give all the respect and credit to Nadal because he lost here in straight sets to Berdych in the quarterfinals as recently as 2015. That's not going back a long time. Berdych did incredibly well at this tournament, attacking the net, using his serve. Having been injured so recently, it was a very positive week for him, but Nadal just that much better, and that's been the story of his campaign so far. Whatever his opponents have done well, he's just been even greater at. So that brings Nadal, the number 2 seed, in great form, coming in to face Tiafoe. Let's have a quick look at some of those stats for Nadal from that match. 32 winners to Berdic's 24. 17 unforced errors from Nadal to Berdic's 32, which is a key stat. So, yes, let's look at his breakpoint conversion as well. He had 13 breakpoint opportunities, Nadal did, which he only managed to take 5, but against Berdych with that big serve to have that many opportunities anyway is pretty impressive. So, Tiafoe and Nadal have not faced off before. Nadal's forehand is just so different to the style of the other players on tour. There's no one that has that kind of brand of shot that's quite like Nadal's. And I think that however pumped up Tiafoe is, he might struggle with that, because I've heard players say before, you never fully know what you're coming up against when you play Nadal until it's actually there and actually happening. So, I mean, Tiafoe's been consistent, he's used his forehand well, he's been very intense when competing, but I just have a few doubts. I mean, he could get the upset, but with the form that Nadal is in, I wouldn't want to back against him. So in this situation, for this time around, in their first meeting, I'm going to predict Rafael Nadal to win this match, and I'm always nervous to predict in straight sets because it doesn't give the other opponent much of a chance, and obviously every player is here for a reason. But this time around, I'm actually going to predict Nadal to win in straight sets. So 3 sets for Nadal. Let's have a look at the time. 5:15. I have to... If we're a bit quicker on these, we might be able to make it through. What do you think, guys? Do you want me to continue? Let's have a look. A lot of questions coming in. I'm afraid that I won't be able, if you've asked questions, hopefully I answer them as I'm talking. I won't have time to answer them today, I'm afraid. Let's keep going. I'm going to keep going. We've got 4 matches left, and I'm sorry if I miss out any main big detail, but I think we can get through them all. So, Naomi Osaka versus Alina Svitolina. This should be a good one. Osaka, I think, was in great form in her first 2 matches. Really not a lot. I mean, she didn't have the hardest first 2 opponents to begin with, but she looked very impressive early on, and Svitolina as well, from a different perspective. You've got 2 players here, Osaka, the number 4 seed, playing with a very aggressive brand of tennis, and Svitolina, who's doing a lot of scrambling, being very intense in rallying situations. Both of them coming through the early rounds impressively for different reasons. So, let's start with Osaka, because she's first up here. Osaka, 2 pretty straightforward first round wins, really. 6-4, 6-2, and 6-2, 6-4. Landing enough serves, using her forehand, etc. She wasn't really pushed that much, to be fair. Then it got more difficult when she came up against the players who weren't just hitting cleanly, the players that were trying to mix things up, which were Sue Shea, who's had a good run here before. In fact, she did last year. She was playing very well here, who was the 28th seed, has a 2-handed forehand and a 2-handed backhand. She plays a lot of slice, some squash shots, likes to mix things up, and doesn't like to let her opponents get comfortable. She knows how to play these big hitting power players, and she clearly knows how to frustrate them. Osaka lost that first set, but regrouped for a 5-7, 6-4, 6-1 win. And having come through that, I thought that she wouldn't have as much trouble with Sevastova, because she's kind of come up against a player in Sue Shea who probably does actually mix it up more than Sevastova does. Sevastova is quite aesthetically pleasing to watch. She can hit a very clean, flat ground stroke. And I thought that Sue Shea was probably going to be the one to cause the most trouble for Osaka, but she did lose the first set again against Anastasia Sevastova. And the big thing for Osaka in this most recent match, which only happened a few hours ago really, was the fact that she was throwing in a lot of unforced errors. It wasn't necessarily that Sevastova was forcing her into errors. Yes, if you watch the highlights reel back, there were some stunning rallies between the 2 of them, drop shotting, slicing, mixing things up. But Sevastova, in the match as a whole, she was she was the more hit and hope kind of player. She was, when she had the opportunity to mix it up, especially as the match wore on, she was just hitting backhands cross court, and trying to draw errors off Osaka's backhand just by letting her keep hitting. And in a way, I understand that because Osaka was having a bit of an erratic day, but at the same time, she had so many opportunities where she could have hit into the spaces or changed things up or made Osaka move that she just didn't take. And the fact that Osaka was anticipating well the drop shots at the net and moving well into the court and getting there with great control, there were chances that Sevastova had that she just didn't take, and there were chances that Osaka had that she didn't take, but then she was the player in the end who was able to step up, be consistent, and take the opportunities. So, not the best quality win of Osaka's tournament by a mile, not the best quality win of her past few months by a mile, but the fact that she was able to pull herself through, drag herself through, is very, very positive. So, even though she's dropped a set in her last two matches, Osaka's had a good mix of being able to come through easily and then being able to fight through against the players that mix it up a bit more. But the fact that these two players have troubled Osaka is going to probably be a bit of a confidence boost for Elina Svitolina if she thinks enough about it. Because Svitolina, she's not necessarily a player that just steps back and plays with craft. In fact, she's been quite aggressive this fortnight, but she is a player that doesn't mind the long rallies, that is good on the defense, and that could make Osaka play those extra balls. It depends what kind of game plan she comes out with. So for Svitolina, a 6-1, 6-2 win over Victoria Golubic in the first round, then a 6-4, 6-1 win over Victoria Kuzmova. I do believe that they're both named Victoria. And then she dropped a set against Shuai Zhang, who she had her breakout Grand Slam run here when she beat Simona Halep a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. Time flies when you're having fun. But yeah, a comeback win for Svitolina there, 4-6, 6-4, 7-5. Probably did her good to have a brush with danger there, but in similar fashion to Osaka, she has dropped a set in her last two matches. The most recent one was against Madison Keys in a real seesaw of a match. I watched the majority of this match, Svitolina coming through 6-2, 1-6, 6-1. So very seesaw there. What about this match then? Let me try and think back. It was the first match that I watched this morning. Very early morning. Probably slept for a bit of it as well. But yeah, Svitolina was in that last set. It was the game at 2-1 with Svitolina serving. Keys was giving her a lot of trouble with the firepower. She was hitting into the corners, and when Keys was landing enough ground strokes, Svitolina was kind of losing control. So that gives Osaka a bit of hope if she watches that match back and sees what was happening, because Keys very much on top of things when she was landing her shots, but Svitolina would just keep getting those extra balls back, and she was so intense and landed her serve when she needed to in that game, and managed to hold on for the 2-1 lead. And I just thought at that point, given the lopsided nature of the first two sets, she should have pulled away with it from there, and she did. 6-1 in that final set. Keys will deeply regret her many unforced errors, and it's probably quite a key theme for Keys at the moment to have regrets after matches, because she has all the talent. She has gone to the semis here before. She has the big serve. She has the ability to come forward and finish off the points, but she just lacks the consistency so often, which is something maybe she needs to work on the mental aspects. But Svitolina, great intensity from her. The WTA Finals champion, which bodes well for her because Caroline Wozniacki last year won her maiden Grand Slam title after winning her maiden WTA Finals title a couple of months before. So, let's have a look at some of those stats for Osaka. 7 aces, 70% of first serves won, 51 winners to Sevastova's 22. Not all of them were big ground stroke winners. There were drop shots as well, volleys. Her volley cross court was so well controlled. Very impressed by that from Osaka. 43 unforced errors, which is more than double her opponents, but at the end of the day, that didn't matter because Sevastova was quite forgiving. Will Svitolina be as forgiving? I'm not so sure. Svitolina's stats 3 aces, 63% of first serves in, 70% of those first serves won, 22 winners to her opponent's 37. She was never going to have as many winners as Keys because they play that different brand of tennis. Svitolina is more about forcing the error, getting onto the front foot and forcing the error and keeping herself in the rallies. When she's serving, she will look and try and have a shorter point, sometimes go for the 1-2 punch, but generally it's not her style to just go for winners. So not surprised at those numbers. And a relatively low amount of unforced errors, 16 for Svitolina compared to 34 for Madison Keys. Head-to-head, Osaka's Svitolina. Osaka is trailing the head-to-head. Svitolina leads 3-2. Their most recent meeting came at the Miami Open last year. Svitolina has won both their two most recent meetings, let's put it that way, it's easier to say. Their two most recent meetings, Svitolina has won in straight sets. The last one in Miami on hard courts, 6-4, 6-2. And then the Dubai meeting, just a few weeks before that, really, 6-2, 6-4. So Osaka was just really getting her breakthrough there. She won Indian Wells, obviously. So she was in good form. And it was actually Svitolina that broke her streak in Miami after she'd won Indian Wells, beating a lot of top players. Then she beat Serena Williams in her first match in Miami, and then Svitolina finished her off. So it does show that Osaka has had trouble with this game style. They have played at the Australian Open before, and Osaka won 6-4, 6-4. And Tokyo as well in 2016, Asian swing match, and Osaka a winner again, 1-6, 6-3, 6-2. They played way back in 2014, also 3 sets, but that one not as important. So recent meetings show that Svitolina does have what it takes to trouble Osaka. From the beginning of the tournament, I expected Osaka to make the semis, which makes this prediction difficult for me because all the way through I've been thinking probably a Serena Williams versus Naomi Osaka semi-final, which would be a nightmare to predict. But, I mean, Svitolina's been doing so well, hanging so tough. I think she was a massive underdog at the WTA finals when she won, so I'm kind of tempted to predict Svitolina to win, even though I've kind of been backing Osaka to go deep this whole time. So this is probably the toughest prediction, at least one of the toughest. Given that it's so difficult, even though the last 2 meetings have been straight sets, I'm going to go for a 3-setter. Both of them have just played 2 3-setters coming into this meeting. And it's a flip of a coin, really. It comes down to who executes the most consistently on the day. And I just think I'll regret it if I don't go with Osaka. Honestly, with the amount of unforced errors Osaka threw in today, I'm not convinced that she's going to win this match. But even though Svitolina looks great, intense, focused, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to say on this occasion, Naomi Osaka to win this one in 3 sets. I have a very strong feeling that I could be wrong, but I also have a feeling that Osaka could win the whole thing. So there we go. Next match, we have got 3... No, we've got 3 matches left to go. I've got 20 minutes before I need to wrap this up, so let's go quickly. Going quickly will be helped by Serena Williams, who, apart from her meeting with Simona Halep a few hours ago, steamrolled through her draw. That's the 16th seed, really the top player in a lot of people's eyes with her 23 Grand Slam titles, and with the fact that she has reached the last two Grand Slam finals that she's played. And actually, going before that, the last time she was here in Melbourne 2 years ago, she won the event, beating Venus in the final, then took time off to have Olympia, obviously, then came back and made the final of her first 2 Grand Slams. So Serena is so locked in and so invested in these events. Even when she was losing at one point to Halep earlier, yes, she was getting pumped up, but she almost seemed relaxed at one point. I think it's come to a stage in her career where Serena's done these matches so many times that she just knows what she needs to do to pull through, even if she's not playing her best tennis. She's up against Karolina Pliskova, the number 7 seed, so ranked higher this time. And Pliskova has had a fair run herself. Let's start with Serena. Her first 3 wins don't need much comment. Her first 3 wins, slow down, speak properly, speak English. They don't need much comment, to be honest. Tatiana Maria, Eugenie Bouchard, Diana Yastremska. Three players who, honestly, I think play a similar brand of tennis. They're hitting hard, they're going flat from the baseline, sometimes coming forwards, but not doing it as well as some of the other players on tour. Serena, though, very much focused. This is a kind of game style that she likes to be up against because she just knows she's that much better. 6-love, 6-2 over Tatiana Maria, 6-2, 6-2 over Eugenie Bouchard, and 6-2, 6-1 over Diana Yastremska. That was all easy breezy for Serena early on, to be honest. She did throw in some unforced errors, but her opponents just didn't have the quality to penalise that in a big way. Then she came up against Simona Halep, and Halep said it was like being hit by a train in the first match because of how quickly everything was coming. Serena's made a point of inflicting her old aggression, going for return winners, stepping up early in these rallies. She's not wanting to hang about, and she definitely showed that to Halep in the first set. Despite losing her serve in the first game of the match, she immediately broke straight back and didn't lose another game on the way to the first set. She did have opportunities to close it in straights, and I think this is what helped her maintain composure in the third because she knew she'd been so close to winning and therefore could get there again. She let that one go. It was 5-4 to Halep. Serena was serving. It was 30-all, and credit to Halep. She just saw her opportunity, saw the second serves, stepped in, punished them, won the next 2 points, and got through into the third set. In that third set, Halep looked very zoned, very dialed in, almost like the Halep that thrashed Serena Williams at the WTA finals in 2014 before Serena Williams came back and got revenge, essentially, in the final by thrashing Halep back. At 3, am I thinking of the correct scoreline? 3-2 in the decider, Halep seemed to have the upper hand, not in terms of stepping forward and hitting winners, but in terms of the fact that she was just so consistent, and every time Serena put angles on the rallies, cross-court, Halep just got her racket on them, got them back with depth, with interest, and was doing incredibly well in that department. She wasn't missing. Serena, meanwhile, when a long rally was extended, she would be very likely to miss a backhand. Serena was often controlling, she often had the upper hand, she was often the one to pull the unforced error. It would just kept happening. Her backhand was a liability at that point. And we've seen how good that backhand can be, but it was really letting her down. She was starting to look a bit frustrated, and that game was key because Halep, I think, she either had 3 break points or 5 break points. I can't remember stats like that off the top of my head. I'll have written it down. I took extensive match notes on the third set, so we might as well have a look. It's an absolute mess, though. I mean, stuff everywhere. Let's have a look. That's US Open notes. There's no point. I'm not going to find it. Check my Twitter. I'll have tweeted it. But yeah, Halep came so close in that game. Deuce game. Lots of game points. Lots of break points. Serena's serve was her saving grace there, because if she hadn't have had that serve, if she hadn't have landed those first serves when she did, because she was landing a lot of second serves, I don't think she'd have won that match. I think if Serena hadn't won that game, she would have been looking at a bit of a mountain to climb, and Halep would have been very confident as well. But what Serena did was manage to land enough big first serves, getting her some cheap points, and it was first serves and 1-2 punches that got her through that game. She was not winning rallies to save her life, but first serves, 1-2 punches, that was enough. Got her the hold, 3-all, and from there she was away, really. I mean, a Halep love hold towards the end of the match did nothing to stop her rhythm. Halep did leak some errors in the game after, and you could tell she was frustrated, but the mental pressure to deal with of having those opportunities and not being able to take them. I mean, Serena was just so much more confident after winning that game, stepped up, got the break, didn't look back. So I think it's very positive for Serena that she's being tested ahead of a potentially tricky match with Karolina Pliskova. She was pushed close there, and I think that she will probably appreciate that further down the line, especially if Pliskova even is having a good serving day. Let's have a look at Pliskova then very briefly. Easy first round win, straight sets against a fellow Czech. Then she was pushed by Madison Brengel, who had a few good results, beat Serena Williams actually in New Zealand in a very windy match 2 years ago. Pliskova lost the first set, but then rolled through the second to 6-1, 6-love in that second round match. Camilla Giorgi was going to be trouble, the hot and cold Italian who can play with firepower that few on tour can match when she's actually nailing it, went deep at Wimbledon as a result. But Pliskova with the greater consistency and the greater serve to come through 6-4, 3-6, 6-2. And then I think the biggest win for her over Garbiñe Muguruza in the fourth round. Muguruza had been having kind of an almost breakthrough comeback Grand Slam tournament. She didn't have a good year last year. She played a phenomenal match to beat Johanna Konta in the second round. She did not drop serve all through a very tight three-setter. That was one of the best matches I've ever seen on the women's tour. Brilliant standard from both players. But Pliskova dispatched her 6-3, 6-1. And we might as well look at a few of the stats from that one. 5 aces, 0 double faults for Pliskova, 78% of first serve in, and for a player with as massive a first weapon as Pliskova, that number is definitely a key one because she can really start dominating. 82% of those first serve points won, 23 winners compared to just 3 unforced errors for the whole match. And for Pliskova, that's very impressive because she plays with low margin. She strikes a very flat ball, even. She strikes a very flat ball compared to a lot of the tour. And so for her to be able to play with such low percentage margins, so close to the line with big serves, and then come away only having hit 3 unforced errors, that's brilliant. And that's going to be tough to continue against Serena Williams. And I did have a head-to-head up for these two, but it has disappeared, and I'm going to get it back up. I know they've played each other 3 times, I think, and Serena has a 2-1 advantage. I am correct, according to Google. Their first meeting was at Stanford in 2014. Serena dispatched of Pliskova in straight sets. The next 2 matches have been straight sets, but 1 win each. Pliskova's 2016 US Open win in the semi-finals was a killer for Serena. It meant that Pliskova had beaten both Williams sisters in the same tournament, and she'd saved match point to beat Venus as well, so that was incredibly impressive from her. That was 6-2, 7-6, and she was really setting up with the serve and following it up well. Then Serena got revenge at last year's US Open, winning 6-4, 6-3. It had been a much hyped match, and Serena kind of burst the balloon, popped the bubble, and did very well. That was a quarter-final of a hardcourt tournament. Here they are meeting again in the quarter-final of the next hardcourt tournament, so maybe Pliskova has more fresh in her mind what she needs to work on. She should be confident after the form that she showed against Muguruza, but even though Pliskova definitely has the potential to upset, this is an easy prediction for me, given that I predicted Serena to win the whole tournament. So I definitely know that I'm predicting Serena to come through after she fought past Halep, after she's seen what she needs to work on from that match. So I'm going to predict Serena to win, and it could be close, but I'm going to pick Serena to win in straight sets. And I think if she does win in straight sets, which I'm not confident of, they'll probably be 2 tight sets. So that's my prediction there. We've got 10 minutes, and I'm going to make sure that I absolutely whiz through these last 2. I'm sorry, I know these previews could be better quality, but this is all the time I have. So thank you for all your questions as well. I will look through them and try and leave replies in the comments at some points if there's anything you want answering. But let's move on now to Milos Raonic versus Luca Pouille. Milos Raonic, this number 16 seed, but playing like he's top 10, absolutely on fire. And Luca Pouille having a little bit of a breakthrough, now has Amelie Mauresmo on his team. Maybe that's made a positive influence. He's seeded number 28. Raonic, what a run has Raonic had? If you get the time, just Google Milos Raonic and look at the players he's beaten. Rather impressive. Nick Kyrgios in round 1, straight sets win. Stan Wawrinka in the second round, 4 tiebreaks, and some lengthy tiebreaks there as well. But Raonic won the next 3 after losing a tight first tiebreak to come through. Then a straight sets win over Pierre-Hugues Herbert, who's underrated in my opinion, can play from all areas of the court, has a lot of doubles experience that makes him quite dangerous on the singles court as well. And then absolutely thrashed Alexander Zverev today, 6-1, 6-1, 7-6. Zverev just didn't really have a look in. I mean, for Raonic so far, I think the story has been for him nailing the big serve with good variety and following it up to the net. If you were to boil it down to one thing that's really worked well for him, that is it. And when he's nailing it like that, it's actually way past him. You definitely need to be protecting your serve well, and it wasn't something that Zverev was able to do today. You've probably seen his racket smash, 9 times smashed apparently, after he was just failing to find answers against Raonic. Let's have a look at those stats. 15 aces for Raonic, 80% of first serves won, 45 winners, which is more than double Zverev's effort of 21. And at the beginning, it looked like it would be a close match. Zverev seemed to know what he was up against, but Kyrgios called Raonic's tennis scary tennis in the first round and called it some of the best serving he'd ever seen. People might have been inclined to take that with a pinch of salt, but Raonic has been in great form and played here well before and played scary tennis before, so we should have known that this was a possibility. So Raonic looking very strong, and I've crossed something off when I didn't mean to. Let's get that back up. Yeah, I definitely, after the first couple of rounds, I expected to see him in this position, and honestly expected him to get to the semi-finals as well, but Luca Pouille has been surprising everyone. He's had some really good results, if I can get them back up so that I'm not scrambling. Here we go, Luca Pouille. The Frenchman who's had good results before, who's proven to be trouble, who's taken Nadal out of a Grand Slam before at the 2015 US Open, but hasn't been in great form of late. He's bringing it back and he's fought through some, credit to him. Mikhail Kukushkin down in straight sets to him in the first round. Maximilian Martyra 4 sets in the second round. Then Alexei Popyrin gave him trouble when Pouille led by 2 sets to love in the third round. But Pouille hung tough to win that one 7-6, 6-3, 6-7. He had a match point in that set. 4-6, 6-3. So 5-set win. Popyrin, great firepower, great control at the net, really fast mover for a guy of his height, a very promising player. And Pouille was able to turn it around, and credit to him because he said he did have flashbacks to his match with Gael Monfils last year, which he led 2 sets to love and lost. So good mental win for him to come through that one. And then win over Borna Coric. Now, Coric didn't have his best day. I saw him making a lot of unforced errors. Possibly nervous. It was a great draw for both Coric and Pouille. Neither of them had reached the quarterfinals here before. In fact, I don't think any of them had won a match at the Australian Open before this. 24 aces from Coric, which is decent. 19 from Pouille. 2 players utilising their serves there. Pouille's serve has stood out to me in the big moments during his time in Melbourne this year. He's not got the biggest serve, but is definitely able, and he can land it with good precision. Very close stats, really. 57 winners for Pouille, 53 for Coric, but 43 unforced errors for Pouille and 55 for Coric. And the key thing for Coric, he made those unforced errors in bad moments. So good from Pouille to come through that one, and he has the unenviable task of taking on Raonic in the next round. They've played 3 times, and Raonic has come away the victor in all 3 of those meetings. Let's have a look at what they were. All of them have come in either 2016 or beyond. 2 of them came in Australia and 1 of them came at the Australian Open. 6-4, 6-4 for Milos Raonic in the 2016 quarterfinals of Brisbane. That was a tournament that Raonic won. That was when he was playing tennis similar to the tennis he's playing now. 6-1, 6-4, 6-4 at the 2016 Australian Open in the first round. Moved on for both of them for it to be quarterfinals now. And then on the grass of Stuttgart last year, so another fast surface, a 6-4, 7-6 win for Raonic. So a closer result there, but yet to drop a set against Pouille is Raonic. Could be closer here, but I don't have time to mull over it, so I'm going to say Maula Wala. Get your words out. Speak English. Milos Raonic to win this match in straight sets. Tempted to say 4 and backtrack, but I've said it now. Straight sets for Milos Raonic. I mean, it takes a lot to keep his momentum, but he did drop that set against Wawrinka, so it's not like he's won every single match in straights. Right, last one. It's a shame I have to keep this quick because it's a big matchup. Novak Djokovic versus Kei Nishikori, the top seed versus the 8th seed, though it didn't look like Nishikori was going to survive here to this point at one point in time. Let's go through their results. Novak Djokovic pushed closer in his last 2 rounds against Denis Shapovalov and Daniil Medvedev after straight sets wins over Michel Correga and Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, who has the ability to push Djokovic around and make things difficult, but lacks the consistency at this point in time. Shapovalov, with his one-handed backhand and all-court game and his reputation for being one of the brightest next-gen stars, was always going to be trouble, but after losing that 6-4 third set, Djokovic rebounded well for the 6-love 4th set. He's just one of the best mentally, Novak Djokovic. Really, really good in the mental department. When he's being pushed close, when he's being taken to long rallies, he's almost unmatched. Him and Nadal, I think, are definitely the strongest mentally at the moment. Djokovic's struggles of the past couple of years had a lot to do, I think, with his head game. And he looked very good in his opening matches. I think his standard probably dropped a bit in his latest match against Daniil Medvedev, but Medvedev really had him on the ropes at times. Medvedev is a very confident player, almost verging on arrogance, really. He said ahead of the match that Djokovic wasn't the player he once was, and he definitely fancied his chances of beating him. Nothing wrong with that at all. Very confident and very good to see, to be honest. And he came out not trying to be the aggressor, but trying to stay with Djokovic, go toe-to-toe with him, and doing that very well, actually. He just relented a bit at the end for Djokovic to take that first set. He then started looking a bit pessimistic, a little bit fatigued from the long rallies at the beginning of the second set and was broken. But he upped his level and pushed and got back on serve, and it was a tie-break, and Medvedev edged the tie-break, so good mental strength from him. So Djokovic was up against it there because he could easily have been up 2-0, and then it was 1-all. Very different scenario, but he just took a deep breath, managed to come out on the end, right ends even, managed to come out on the right end of a lot of juice games, which was absolutely key because Medvedev then had the feeling that he'd done a lot of work and a lot of things right, but really for nothing because Djokovic was winning most of the big points. And is Djokovic in absolutely prime optimum form? I'm not convinced, but I think that he is in good enough form and will probably get this next win. But let's just have a quick look at Nishikori's run. Credit to him, he was down 2-0 against a virtually unknown qualifier in the first round. Managed to come through that one, but it was via retirement. So 6-love, 6-2, 3-love, and then his opponent retired. But I mean, immediately that would have taken a lot of Nishikori's energy. He would then have to play 5 sets again against Ivo Karlovic, the man with the big serve, good volleys, great form. He was coming into the event having reached an ATP final. Nishikori had done the same. So 2 informed players clashing early there. Nishikori led by 6-3, 7-6, and then Karlovic took 2 really close sets, 7-5, 7-5. But in similar fashion to Bautista Agut, Nishikori was able to regroup, and 2 of his 3 5-set matches have now come down to a horrendous final set super tiebreak. I do not like at all these 10-point tiebreaks. Too much chance. High quality tennis, best of 5 should not come down to a tiebreak, whether it's a normal tiebreak or whether it's a 10-point super tiebreak. That should definitely be confined to doubles only. So Nishikori won those first 2 rounds, had an easier time against João Sousa, which he will definitely be grateful for going into face Djokovic because you do not want to be worn out ahead of that meeting. He was down 2-0 against Pablo Carreño Busta, but given his form so far in his fight, you knew that Nishikori wouldn't call it quits, and he didn't have to feel for Carreño Busta. There was so much drama in this match. I don't have the time to talk about the whole line call situation, but I've put my opinion on Twitter, so if you have any questions about that or wonder about how it went down, just go on my Twitter. I've done basically an essay on that, so I don't want to go into that here because honestly I don't think it had an effect on the final outcome of the match. Even after that line call and that situation, Pablo Carreño Busta was still 8-6 up in that final tiebreak, and Nishikori just stepped up with great aggression, great fight to get the win. He never played the scoreboard, Nishikori. He was a great example of playing every point as it came, concentrating only on the next point, and staying in the moment. And to come from 2 sets to love down, winning 2 tiebreaks, very impressive. But do I think he'll beat Novak Djokovic? Honestly, probably not, because A, he's worn out, and B, you can look at the head-to-head and see that he hasn't beaten Djokovic in a while. Now, the 2 times he has beaten Djokovic has been quite high profile. He beat him in the semi-finals of Basel in 2011, when Nishikori wasn't so much at the top of the game, and then at the US Open in 2014, when Nishikori went all the way to the final. So that was his last win before he lost to Marin Cilic, and that was a 4-set win. Since then, many Djokovic victories, a lot of them in straight sets, and when he's won that many matches in succession, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 straight wins for Djokovic, I believe. No, I've got my maths wrong, because he's only got 15 wins, full stop. But, I mean, it's at least 13 straight wins for Djokovic, and once you've beaten a player that regularly, it is hard for them to find a way in. Nishikori did push Djokovic close last year when he was struggling, but didn't manage to get the victory. So it doesn't bode well for him here. I'm not writing Nishikori off at all. He's got a great all-court game. The way he's fought so far this week, part of me thinks he'll at least take a set. But I think this is quite a favourable matchup for Djokovic, and I was going to say Djokovic to win in straight sets, and I think that will possibly happen, but the way Nishikori has fought, the way he's come from looking in a losing situation to pulling through, just makes me want to give him a bit of benefit of the doubt. So I'll say Novak Djokovic to win, but I'll say for him to do it in 4 sets, presuming that Nishikori has a little bit left in the tank. But I mean, he's played a lot of tennis over a short space of time, Nishikori, so I don't think anyone could blame him if his fatigue was too much to really do damage here. I think that if Djokovic doesn't have his best day, there definitely will be opportunities for Nishikori, but then he has to play Djokovic physically and then get through that mental barrier of having so many lost matches on the trot as well. Anyway, it's much later than I meant to finish, but we have finished. They're my predictions. When I've ended this video, go to the actual comment section and feel free to let me know what you thought of my preview and predictions. I'm sorry that I couldn't be as well prepared for it as usual, but literally it was this or nothing, and I knew you wanted a preview and predictions video. Thank you everyone for tuning in and for leaving your comments. I will make a point to read through them later on when I'm less busy. I hope you've all been enjoying the tennis. I hope you're not as tired as I am. This is probably the worst I've ever felt during a Grand Slam, but it's been a great event, and it's not even over yet. So many close matches, so many quality matches, and we should be in for some great quarterfinals. So